for Saturday, December 7th, powered by sportsbookreview.com. I'm Ian Cameron, joined by Adam Booth, and we are here as we are 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, with our play of the day recommendations in the National Hockey League. 3 days of the week where we always have a busy card. Today, a big card as well. No difference there. Let's start with you, Adam, and get to your selection for this Saturday slate. You went to the New York Islanders Dallas Stars matchup, courtesy of SBRodds.com. Make sure you're using that resource every day to get the best line and price with all of your plays. Dallas is laying minus 145 right now as home favorites. The total 5 in this one, shaded to the over. It's like we're back in 2009 NHL, not 2019 NHL, with a total of 5 showing up in this game between the Islanders and Stars. But you can obviously understand why. Two teams that offensively a little bit challenged lately, and two teams more than adept at the defensive end of the ice and have played their share of lower scoring games throughout the course of the season. So that's why you see the total of 5 here. But it's the side that Adam is most interested in here in this game. Tell us about it, Adam. Islanders and Stars.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I mentioned in the article this morning that a few weeks ago you would have said this is the best in the East versus the best in the West, given the phenomenal streak that the Islanders were on, point streak. I don't even know what it got up to, maybe 17 games, or it was pretty high there. And then Dallas themselves had like an 11-game streak of some sort. Again, I didn't really pay close attention. They were both very, very hot. And then sort of as the end of November rolled around, we saw the Hawks lose one. The Hawks beat the Stars on the back-to-back, and then sort of the hints came back, and the Stars' offense disappeared a little bit, and they didn't play poorly. They just lost a string of games in a row, and that's bound to happen again, just the same way that they got on a streak. And then the Islanders, they go out to California. They see their great streak come to a close against they lost the shootout one to San Jose, but then they lost, I think, by 2 goals to both the Kings and the Ducks, and 2 or 3 goals. And so you sort of say, well, what happened there? Maybe it's just a bad trip, the time zone change, or, they're relaxing too much after their streak, whatever it is. They just got outplayed by some desperate teams. And then they, coming back out east, the only one they've dropped since returning was that one to a very desperate Habs team. So you say in this mix, since the streak ended, the Islanders aren't playing bad hockey. They are playing against some teams that are far lower in the standings, with Montreal, Anaheim, LA, that sort of thing, all really needing wins. And in these low-scoring games, which the Islanders like to play, that's the style that they've set up again this season, you do leave teams that have sort of maybe weaker offenses around to steal a game, you might say. But I actually thought, for even in the Detroit game, they've been outplayed recently, and that isn't Islanders style. Even if they're in their defensive zone, you say they're limiting the shots against Varlamov, or they got Grace back. So going down to Dallas, I think they're on either a 2-game or 3-game trip beginning tonight. I know they got Tampa next. You would say the Islanders are a top team in the league, and they have been since 4 games into the season. So why not just take the dogs here? I have the Stars at 62% to win this today, which puts value on them. The line has moved slightly against me so far. I really don't think it's going to pick up to like a minus 125 or minus 135. I think it's going to stay down below the minus 140 range. And the reason being, Dallas Stars, they're not a bad defensive team in their own right. I mean, if you look at the head-to-head numbers between the two, you might say the Islanders are top 3 or 5 in almost every defensive category. The Stars are still in the top 10 and even top 5 in some of those same categories. And I'd say they have the better goaltenders. So regardless of Bishop or Khudobin's in net, I'm not concerned about that. They've got good puck-moving defensemen. They've got offensive threat defensemen. Klingberg hasn't been the number one offensive guy this year. It's been I always say it wrong. Correct me, Ian.
Heiskanen.
Heiskanen.
Yeah, there you go.
I sound like Don Cherry pronouncing some of these
Something
names
like that.
sometimes.
Yeah, something like that. You got to throw that line in there. Something like that. Yeah. Close enough. Yeah, as he said.
Yeah, you're my Ron McLean, right?
Yeah.
You just sort of give the thumbs up and just sort of shake your head. But I again, the Islanders are a team. I was going back through my records. I was on them, 9 games or 11 games or something like that through their streak. I know what they're capable of, but I don't like to venture too far against the model. I've done it a few times, taking the Stars in spots, and it's burned me. And so I try not to get too adventurous, especially where it's a home team this isn't their first game back home. They're not on a back-to-back. It's a team coming out west, or the East Coast to Texas. So it's not a incredible spot for the Islanders. I do understand playing the value on the dog team that's capable of an upset. But I'm going to stick with the projection, and I'm also looking at there to be more goals than this 5 suggests. A 5 this early in the season, even for defensive teams. I mean, most of the games that the Stars have been involved in have still hit 5 or 6 goals recently. Winnipeg, it was 5 goals, 6 goals. Minnesota, 5 goals. Lost 3-1 to St. Louis, 3-0 to Chicago, and then they beat the Golden Knights 4-2. So you say it's a bit short given head-to-head, but this isn't an ideal spot for the Islanders. And in a lot of these games recently, I haven't been impressed with New York's play. They got the overtime win against a good Golden Knights team the other night, who was on 3rd game in 4 nights or something like that. They got heavily outplayed against Montreal, heavily outplayed against Detroit. They're still in games, though, because of the way Trotz has set them up. And the same thing can happen tonight. I don't expect it to be a blowout, but I think we do see a few more goals, and I don't think that plays to the type of game, like 2-1 game or 0-0 entering the 3rd type of game that the Islanders want to play. So it's a bit of a tricky one, but that's kind of the rationale to support the probability. So, what are your thoughts on that one, Ian? I understand people not really wanting to get involved in that one.
Yeah, that's my thought. I'm not involved in that one at all, actually. I like Dallas, and when they win a game, I'm always reluctant to bet against them the next game because they're streaky. When they win again, and they win again, and they win again. And when they lose again, and they lose again. That's been the season for Dallas. They've been a streaky team in both directions in terms of winning streaks and losing streaks. So, and again, the Islanders are a tough out, feisty team. Really good team, obviously. They've had a really good season so far, so it's a tricky price range to go against them in. But I understand the reasoning there with Dallas in terms of just the number was a little shorter than what you had it, and liking the Stars as a result. All right, my play, Minnesota, Carolina is where I'm going. Looking at the total in this game, Carolina minus 165, home favorite, total 5.5, pretty much even money across the board. Minnesota flew over the total in their last game against Tampa Bay. It was a 5-4 final score, and they won that game, somehow playing great hockey and somehow still winning games despite 2 key forwards they lost earlier this week in the game against Florida. Earlier in the week, or 2 key players, I should say, 1 defenseman, 1 forward. Jared Spurgeon on the blue line out for at least 2 weeks. Mikko Koivu day-to-day, but he's going to miss at least the games this weekend. Why are those 2 guys significant? Because Jared Spurgeon, he's put up some points too, actually. So you could argue, it'll hurt them offensively a little bit, but he's really going to hurt them more defensively because throughout his tenures with the Minnesota Wild, he's been very good in his own zone. He's been a guy that he plays a lot of minutes, important minutes on the ice in all situations. And now he's not out there for the Minnesota Wild. And Mikko Koivu, he is nowhere near the offensive player and force he was, say, 5-10 years ago. He struggles mightily at times to produce offensively, and he goes through a lot of droughts at that end of the ice. But at the defensive end of the ice, he's still a very important cog for the Minnesota Wild. He is a very good defensive forward. He's always in good position. He's always involved in the back check when his team doesn't have the puck. He plays on the penalty kill. And all of those areas take a big hit when Mikko Koivu's out of the lineup. And we saw that the penalty kill actually gave up, I think, a goal or 2, if I'm not mistaken, against Tampa the other night. So that was a shootout without those 2 guys the other night. Now, not every game is going to be 5-4 to that extent, 9 goals. But can we get 6 goals, which cashes us an over tonight between Minnesota and Carolina? I think so. I know Carolina's on this under streak, and that's the one thing that made me hesitant at the very beginning. I think they've gone under the total in 6 or 7 in a row. This Carolina team, we know offensively things have started to sputter for them, spin their wheels a little bit offensively, although they did pull out a 3-2 shootout win against San Jose the other night. Signs, though, at least that the offense is getting a little bit back on track, because I did see them generate better quality chances, generate a little more shots the other night against San Jose. And again, we're talking now about a Minnesota team that's, without 2 key defensive reinforcements, so to speak, in this game tonight. You've got goaltending that on both sides, to me, has been a little bit shaky of late. I know Alex Stalock has done as good a job as you could probably ask of him in light of the Devin Dubnyk situation. He's likely going to be back in. He's probable. Mrazek probable for Carolina. Both of these guys, especially Mrazek, kind of trending in the downward direction right now. He hasn't necessarily played all that great in recent games. And now that this total, which at 6, I may not play it, but now that it's gone down to 5.5, I don't think the odds makers or anybody betting under has fully taken into account the significance of these 2 absences for Minnesota at the defensive end of the ice, both in terms of Jared Spurgeon and Mikko Koivu. And it doesn't hurt our cause either that Minnesota, Carolina, you don't necessarily think when these 2 teams play, are you going to get a high-scoring game? Well, that's been the trend in recent head-to-head meetings with Minnesota and Carolina. I believe 5 of the last 6 or 5 of the last 7 have cashed over tickets. 5 of the last 7 going over the total in the head-to-head between the Wild and the Hurricanes. So this total 5.5, I got -105. It's -110 now in most spots. It's still a great price, great number. I like Minnesota, Carolina over 5.5 play of the day.
I love it. I took it this morning at +100, and I was very happy with that. I'm also on Minnesota and the Minnesota team total over. You know how I like to really ride the value where I can find it, if I can find it. But no, I completely agree with your angles there, Ian, and it's one that I think 5.5 is a treat. Even though, both these teams are prone at times, but every team really is. I mean, even when you look at this Minnesota win streak, 2 weeks into the season, when they're 0-7, they're the last team that still hasn't won a game. You're thinking, the Wild are never going to have a chance to be in the playoffs or in the conversation. They're going to finish bottom of their division. And, teams get on nice little streaks and they find a groove. The lines start clicking a bit and, all the cliche stuff that we like to talk about. So I mean, we talk about a team that's just riding hot right now. I did find the value on the Wild and on this over. And mentioning the injuries, I think that's a key part of it. And we just talked about, it's not necessarily that the backup players can't perform. It's that there are key players that maybe log more ice time, or they're on a power play or a penalty kill that can make a difference. So I agree, Ian. And we're actually under time. Is there another game that you're looking at today? The one game that I had circled that I'm excited to talk about a total was the Flames-Kings game. I don't know if you looked at the 5.5 there.
I just don't know if LA is going to contribute much. I really like the way Riddick's playing. I really like the way, actually, defensively they've played for the last few games, Calgary. But again, those wacky, bonkers line combos that Jeff Ward came up with prior to the last game against Buffalo, where he has Johnny Gaudreau on a third line with a couple of pluggers, a couple of muckers in Derek Ryan and Milan Lucic. I mean, I don't know what the hell you're doing putting him with that, but maybe it's a wake-up call. It's like, get your act together, wake up, and start playing better. But nevertheless, Calgary had one of their better offensive games in a very long time against Buffalo with those crazy line combinations. I think Calgary team total over is probably the safer play in that game. I just don't know if LA is going to do a whole lot. I don't like this team offensively. They haven't scored at all on the road. Again, only 1 goal last night in the loss to Edmonton on the road. They've actually scored at home. They've scored and been winning some games at home. They have not scored at all. They've been brutal offensively, and they've been terrible overall on the road. So they've been a very, very sharp home road team, LA.
So my angle on this one, we've got a minute, is the Chuck Doughty thing leaves it more prone to power play penalties, getting fired up for this game. I think part of my angle yesterday was not looking past the Oilers, but definitely having the Flames game circled. And the Kings, remember, they're 2-0 against the Flames this year. 2 of their 11 wins have come against this Calgary team. So I could see fireworks again today, and I'm excited to actually, if I'm awake for this one, it's usually like a 3 a.m. start. I will try to turn it on and see if it's one of the few sort of player-to-player rivalries that we get to enjoy in the modern day NHL with the scheduling and everything. So so that was my angle on it, and I think that the defensive side for the defensive numbers for the Kings are sort of maybe a distraction or not very real. And the Flames found some offense. As you mentioned, Goudreau, he broke his goalless streak by switching up the lines the other night against Buffalo. So I think we could see some goals today. And LA is out shooting their opponents very heavily. And they're the lowest shooting, tied with Detroit for the lowest shooting percentage in the league. So if they can still get 40 shots somehow, we could, that's kind of the ratio that we need, 40 shots to get that 2 or 3 goals. But yeah, you're right. Riddick's been playing well. So anyway, any final thoughts, mate?
Yeah, that's it. That's about, no, I would only bet over the total in that game. It's just a question of what LA does. In theory, though, I want to be starting to look at some Calgary overs in the near future. Obviously, Buffalo went over the total the other night, their last game. Can you get up? Can you pull LA into an over? I hope so, but I'd certainly lean that way. But LA always worries me especially on the road when it comes to their ability to score. Hopefully, those power plays come through for the Kings for that to go over. I do like Buffalo, Vancouver over 6. That is going to be on my card. I like the Flyer puck line. Just a couple of other bets I'm looking at against Ottawa and Pittsburgh puck line. I consider just to fade Detroit, but I don't like it on a back-to-back. And let's not forget, Detroit's playing awful. They're getting blown out in every game. They're injury-riddled. Pittsburgh's injury-riddled too, and they're on the second night of back-to-back. So it's not an optimal spot for the Penguins. So I may leave that alone this time around in terms of
I'm riding the dog there. I'm on Detroit Moneyline, Detroit alternate puck line to win by 2 goals or more. So this is a ideal sort of spot for them, given this is their one game this week between, I think, Monday and following Monday. So they've had some time to look at some things that they've, not had going. But anyways, we'll leave it there. I'll let you sign us off.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff, Adam. Great job, as always. We're back Tuesday, 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time with our next edition of the SBR NHL Double Play of the Day video. So to recap, Adam's got Dallas minus 147 against the New York Islanders. I'm on Minnesota, Carolina over 5.5, minus 105. That'll wrap it up for our show today. We're back on Tuesday. For Adam Booth, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great weekend. Good luck on the ice, and we'll see you again on Tuesday.